Some of the best forage crops that we can grow for our livestock are great for soil health. They're widely nutritious for our livestock, but they often come with their downsides and the risk of poisoning livestock with very specific issues. I'm Rob from Dowdle Family Farms, and I'm on a mission to grow more livestock feed for our cattle and especially our pigs on our farm to reduce our reliance on imported grain, herbicides, pesticides, and synthetic fertilizers. In order to do this, some of the most productive crops that we grow are wildly beneficial for soil health, but some of them also have their downsides. In this video, I'll mention some of the very specific issues and questions that I run across, but for the most part, I want to address something that we really deal with, and that is the fear of growing very specific forages. Fear can be a great problem when we start looking at growing things like sorghum sudan grass, clovers, and brassicas. I wanted to first grow sorghum sudan grass because I'd heard how great it is for soil health, and it is phenomenal. But I was also concerned about prussic acid poisoning and nitrate poisoning. I didn't necessarily understand how those two things could be in sorghum sudan grass, and because I couldn't perform some test or know for sure, it nearly kept me from grazing it. After all, I had this tall sorghum sudan grass, cows that wanted to graze it, until finally I decided to give it a try with 2 of our cows. After grazing sorghum sudan grass now for 6 years, I know that you can manage it really well, and it can be an outstanding livestock forage, especially to grass finish our cattle on. Clovers are also another source of concern for livestock producers, primarily because of bloat. I've heard the quote that more money has been lost of fear of bloat than actually to the problem of bloat itself, and that's been true in my experience as well. The first time I started growing clovers because I wanted to fix nitrogen into our pastures. I had a couple bottle calves that we had raised from babies. They grazed it, they performed really well on it, and they gained a lot of weight quite quickly, 3 or 4 pounds of weight gain per day. A couple years later, we planted some clovers out in our pastures, and before we turned the cows on them, my dad purchased several $100s in bloat blocks for the cattle. As it turns out, we did not need the bloat blocks. We spent a lot of money for no reason, and if clovers are fed with at least 50% other forages in the paddock, it turns out that they don't need bloat blocks most of the time. But let me also say this. There are some very good reasons to be cautious. One year we lost 7 head of cattle. It was a miserable 2 weeks. We had some neighborhood dogs ran our cows through the paddock fence that we had, and they had access to sorghum sudan grass. They also had access to sodium nitrate, and I wanted to make sure that we did not have an issue with prussic acid poisoning. We had a necropsy performed with the and it turns out that it was the nitrate poisoning due to the organic Chilean nitrate, also known as sodium nitrate. We no longer keep any fertilizers on the farm. And it was an absolutely miserable experience trying to give an IV of methyl blue to some cows that had nitrate poisoning. In addition to the concerns about sorghum sudan grass and clovers, I'm often asked 2 other questions. One of them is about buckwheat and pigs particularly, but it can be an issue with cattle. And there can be some sunburning in light-skinned pigs and cattle. I'm also asked about grazing brassicas with pigs and cattle. When feeding ruminants like cattle on brassicas, having 70% less of brassicas as their feed source makes a huge difference. You can do that by planting cereal rye or winter wheat with the brassicas, or you can just add some hay in their mix. It helps prevent bloat in ruminants. Pigs don't have an issue with bloat. However, some brassicas can have a sunburning effect on light-skinned pigs, especially dwarf Essex rape and some of those others. I've read a couple articles, and people have asked me about them, about some kidney problems with pigs on brassica pastures. I've never had an issue with
kidney problems in pigs, and I feed a lot of brassicas. However, some literature that I've read have said that kidney problems are really rare in pigs on brassica pastures. But what I've discovered is having a diverse mix of forages for the livestock, whether I'm feeding buckwheat plants, whether I'm feeding brassicas, a diverse set of forages really helps reduce the risk of any problems that we have by overfeeding one specific type of forage to our cattle or our pigs. The main thing that I want to get across, though, is do not let fear be the thing that makes the decision for you. You can start off by first knowing the risk. Sorghum Sudan grass is one of the unique plants that has an issue with prussic acid poisoning. I have other videos that deal with this in more detail, but to prevent prussic acid poisoning, don't graze until the plants are 20 to 24 inches high. You want to give the plants time to regrow after they've been grazed. And also, prussic acid poisoning can be an issue in drought-stressed plants or plants that have recently died because of frost. The second issue that you have with sorghum Sudan grass, with brassicas, and a few other plants is nitrate poisoning. We do not add commercial fertilizers, so the risk of our having nitrate poisoning in our plants is very, very low. I do know some producers who have had nitrate poisoning problems because they've over-fertilized, but because we don't fertilize, that has not been an issue for us. Most of the other issues can be resolved by a diversity of feeds, and it makes a huge difference. For example, bloat in ruminants can be reduced dramatically by including at least 50% grasses with clovers or brassicas. Also, sunburning and kidney issues can be reduced by having a diverse amount of feeds as well. So often we can read about the problems with grazing these very specific crops. And while we do need to be careful and we do need to manage them carefully, we don't want to allow the fear of something to be what keeps us from making these decisions. Now, let me say this. If you're not set up to manage different rotational grazings with sorghum Sudan grass, if you can't keep cows off of it right after it's been planted or right after a frost or when it's drought stressed, then by all means do not try to graze your sorghum Sudan grass. Do not even plant it. However, if you can manage it, it is an absolutely wonderful plant to grow. Similarly, I would encourage you to try each of these different cover crops in small areas, know the risks, consider whether you are able to manage those risks really well. And I'd be willing to bet that slowly but surely you'll become a little bit more confident time after time, and you'll realize that you can graze many different cover crops with your livestock, and it will make a huge difference in the end. The soil health on our farm has improved dramatically. Our livestock are gaining more weight quicker, and we're spending less money on grain for our pigs because we are learning to grow cover crops and we're not letting fear overwhelm us.
I hope you found this video helpful. Just remember, you do want to be watchful with what you grow, but also do not let fear completely overwhelm you. Take care and have a great day.